Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Women of Color and Confidence. I've been looking forward to this interview for weeks now. Chandrika Phea is someone that I've been following online, and she really caught my eye when she was introducing us to her book, Lord, I Don't Want to Die a Christian. Today, in this interview, we're going to be talking about her personal story. And so I just wanted to kind of give a disclaimer, a precursor that we're not here to talk about Christianity as a religion and what we do and don't like about it. It's not that at all. It's about her personal journey through Christianity, her relationship with Christianity, and the revelations that she had on her own through her own life experiences. It's quite a story. I'm really excited to get into it with you. I hope that you'll stick around and listen to it because she has a lot of great insight um, throughout her personal journey that she's going to be sharing during our interview today. So let's go ahead and get started with her.
Do you understand the words that come out of my mouth?
I knew this was going to be a good interview. I love it. I've been looking forward to it for quite some time. I remember seeing some of the stuff that you had online, and then when you decided to come on the show, I was like, yes. I feel like there are things inside your story that people need to hear, and I'm even excited to hear the details of it. Chandrika, thank you so much for joining us, and I think I'm just going to toss it to you to introduce yourself.
Hey, audience and Amber, my name is Chandrika. I am the daughter of pastors, the grandchild of pastors, the niece of pastors, all in the Pentecostal branch, if you will, or genre of Christianity. I am a graduate of Beacon University, where I have a degree in biblical studies. I am ordained, have tons of ministry experience, and I don't want to die a Christian.
I love it, which is also the name of your book. I'm super excited to talk with you more about that too.
Yes, Lord, I don't want to die a Christian, my journal and journey to freedom.
Yes, yes. Well, before we start talking about the book and how the book
Yes.
came to be, I would love to hear a little bit about who you are. And we talk a lot about self-confidence on the show. And so your day to day and how your confidence is in terms of I'd love to hear about your confidence writing the book, but also talking to people about this topic. I feel like it's definitely when I read the when I read the title of the book, I was like, okay, I feel like that it's okay. And I not necessarily that I wasn't sure how to feel about it. I just thought that it was such an interesting thought or even feeling
Yes.
to have. Yeah.
Right.
So
And it really was a sentiment. I didn't sit down to write a book and try to wonder what I was going to write. It came out of my spirit, out of my soul. Like it was literally breath. I exhaled it. So
yeah.
I was even shocked by it. And so after I heard the title, then it was, I thought it was a book. After I said it out of my mouth, I heard it as a book title.
Mm.
And I began to kind of pray about what this book was supposed to be. I never intended to write a book, and I always intended to be a Christian, and until I kind of started evolving.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah,
talk about that. We'll talk about the book in just a second, but
yeah,
can you tell us a little bit about how up until your life, what your journey was like before those words came out of your mouth?
yeah. Like I said, tons of ministry experience. We grew up pastors' kids, preachers' kids, and I guess by economical standards, poor. Um, Middle class, probably late in my teenage years. So all we did was church.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot else that we could do. We went to church and school.
Mhm.
And so uh, I only knew that. And when it was time to graduate from high school, I didn't know what else to do. So
Mhm.
for about 2 or 3 years after high school, probably maybe four, I went to college at 22 and picked a subject because I did not know what I wanted to do. The only thing I was ever exposed to was church.
Mhm.
And so I picked computer science and I failed almost miserably. But I felt inspired somewhere along that journey to get my degree in biblical studies.
Mm.
Um, so I left an HBCU and went to a Bible college in Oklahoma City, which is where I was born and where I'm from. I have three younger sisters. I'm the oldest of four. And went back to Oklahoma City, got an apartment, and started Bible college. Um, and from there, I
Did you find
kind
it
of
rewarding at the time? Like when you were doing it, were you in this place where you're like, I like this. This is what I want to do.
it was it. I did like it. I don't. I remember liking it more than I did what computer science.
Hmm.
I could follow it. You know, I
Yeah.
could follow it. I could write.
Mhm.
I was discovering that I was good at writing, papers. I could comprehend it. I was good at following it, and it had to be meeting as much as I was as much as I lacked self awareness. It had to be meeting some kind of curiosity.
Yeah,
So um,
that makes
I
sense.
don't even know if I knew what I was going to do with it. I felt inspired to do it. I had a some kind of dream or something one day at Langston, and um and I say that because I was laying down. I don't remember being asleep, but I heard so loudly, if you let Ezra carry you. And it woke me up. It was so loud, I thought somebody was in the room.
Uh,
And I had to figure out who this Ezra guy was. Of course, I knew that there was a book of Bible,
yeah.
because as kids, my mother made us practice all the books of the Bible. So at 48, I can still say all of them, all 66 books.
Wow.
And so I knew that it was a book of the Bible, but I didn't know a lot about this guy named Ezra.
Mhm.
And so what I learned was that he was a guy who studied the law of Moses while his peers studied astrology. In his day, astrology was more popular to study. So here I am at Langston University,
Yeah.
trying to receive a popular degree. And amongst all of my friends who are receiving popular degrees, and I'm hearing, if you let Ezra carry you. And so that's what inspired me to go after I realized. So I never knew what I would do with it. I was just going with the inspiration.
Mm.
And so yeah, it I stayed with it until I graduated.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then um tell us a little bit about what happened on your journey from there to I don't want to die a Christian.
That's a great say. I love that. So so I graduated with a degree in biblical studies, and while I had graduated, I had also moved. Well, let me say, while I was pursuing the degree, in the middle of that, I moved from Oklahoma City to Georgia to serve a ministry. Like that's how gung ho I was about Christian ministry.
Is that the
I
normal path that people take? Like once they get their degree, they kind of figure out where it is that they can practice?
well, I wouldn't say that's the normal path taken in Pentecostal churches.
Okay.
And so I was moving from leaving one Pentecostal church to come and serve another Pentecostal ministry.
Hmm.
Um, Black churches are still working on everyday Black churches are still working on paying people. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're doing good to pay musicians. And that's just about it. Most everything else is volunteer. Some of the more larger churches, mega churches, of course, paid staff, of course. But these everyday on the corner, storefronts, yeah. So I was literally moving because again, I felt inspired to move and serve this ministry that I believed and thought they believed needed help.
Hmm.
Uh, I moved here. I served that ministry for I don't know how long, and then I had to step back um, and really just began to serve in a different capacity.
Hmm.
Same ministry, just different capacity. And um,
Do you mind telling us what that capacity was?
I was a worship leader. I was a worship leader. I was an the outreach minister.
Mhm.
So I had a vision for outreach in the community. I still live here in Columbus, Georgia, and I'll never forget one of my goals, if you will, was to evangelize the apartment complex across the street from the storefront.
Uh-huh.
And so, but I had this vision. I had to create a vision. I had a whole pamphlet, a
Mm.
vision, a logo. I had a vision statement, a mission statement. I was ready.
Yes.
And then one day, um, skipping, I got an opportunity to go to China.
China? What were we doing in China?
Dum, 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 dum. Um, I I mean, it really is. There's a lot between that, but I, while going through serving this ministry, I fell in love, and I
Mm.
had to break that off, that engagement off, and um, and you know, often what ladies do is we, cut our hair. We do something drastic after we break up,
Yeah.
get a tattoo or something. And so China was that for me. It
Mm.
was cutting my hair off. It was getting a tattoo after I had broken this engagement off. And
A
um
newness, a freshness.
yes, something different, something new. I had never left the country. As a matter of fact, when I went to start training for the job in China, when I left Columbus to go to San Diego to train for the job, then leave San Diego to go to China, I
Uh,
didn't even have a passport.
wow.
I didn't have, and what I'm saying is, I didn't have a passport from here to San Diego.
Mm.
So I had on a plane with a one-way ticket to go and train in San Diego, I think for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and then leave San Diego to go to China. I had no idea that there was a passport office in near San Diego. None when I got on the plane.
Oh my
So
gosh.
my first day of training in San Diego, we finished the training, and the trainer says, "Hey, let's go. We gotta get the car. We gotta go to the passport office." What? Dude, I had
Yep.
no idea. So we get to the passport
Wow.
office for it to be expedited, and in the 2 weeks time, I had a passport, and I was on my way to China when it was time to board the plane. Never
Awesome.
left the country ever before, and
That
that
is
is
magnificent, by the way. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I would have been losing my little I'm such a worry wart with everything that I don't know. Ooh, how you handled that.
and the crazy thing is I got the job on a Thursday, I think, or Friday, and I had to be on a plane the next Friday.
Oh
So
my.
I had to gather. I had a car, books, clothes, everything. I had an apartment. I had to figure out where I was gonna put all this stuff and go. And I was going for a year.
Wow.
Hmm.
What was your
Um,
time in China like? That I mean, I've been out of the country a couple of times and never to China, but I can imagine that the difference in culture from here to there is quite different. What was your impression when you got over there?
what have I done? Was my
Oh no.
like it was so where we got there. We got I think I don't know. I can't remember if we flew into Shanghai or Beijing. Probably Beijing, but we got to Beijing. Um, then I think we got on a bus and then drove to. Child, I can't remember. I don't know if we flew to Zhengzhou, how whatever. I just remember getting off of a bus in front of the university I was going to work at. I don't remember anything else prior to that. And
Yeah.
no, we did not fly to the university. So I'm telling you, like I don't. It was a 14-hour flight.
Yeah, I know it is far.
Right. So I probably was on some sort of sleep aid or something, trying to make sure I could enjoy that flight the best way possible.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Talk about confidence though, because courage and confidence because
courage.
yeah, I don't know if there are people out here who would, you know, not only the time span, the time crunch, but just the idea of I need something new, so I'm gonna go to China for a year. That, woo, my goodness.
I don't know what I was thinking. I knew that I didn't want to be where I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't, um, I wasn't, I didn't like how I was being handled by ministry people when my heart was broken. You know what I mean? And that can be tough. I was still expected to keep going while I was looking at this man in his face every time we gathered as a congregation, having to accept that the first man I was ever in love with is not going to be my husband.
Yeah.
And so it was some there was as and I like I said, I skipped a lot, but the way China even came up as an opportunity for me to actually go was that I ran into an old professor and he asked me what I was doing with my life, and I was trying to impress him because back to the full circle, if you will, back to the part about Pentecostal, particularly Black Pentecostal ministries, everyday ministries struggle to pay staff,
Mhm.
and so he's a Caucasian guy. So
Mm,
when he asks me what I'm doing and I say I'm in full time ministry, he thinks that I've been on paid staff somewhere. And
mhm.
because I know that's what he thinks, I start trying to impress him.
Uh-huh.
So I said, amongst other things, China's on the table. And someone had mentioned it to me weeks prior. And I wish I would go to China. Are you crazy? But in the moment, it sounded good to impress him. So really, I just lied to him and said China was on the table.
Yeah.
What I did not is that his son lived in China and was teaching there. So when I said it, he said, "Oh, my son is in China."
What?
Right.
Oh, man.
And so he starts to give me this advice, and the advice led to me being in his office on the phone with the organization who sent his son to China.
Wow. Wow. You spoke
That's how,
those words into being real. You spoke that
right,
whole situation into
right.
life.
No plans, no intention. That's why, I mean, literally have never lived out or gone travel outside of the country, let alone live somewhere.
Wow.
And that conversation, that first conversation turned into an interview. The interview turned into, we want to give you the job, to me then traveling to China to California the next week.
Mhm.
And then 2 weeks after that to China.
So what brought you back from China? Just that your time there was done and it's time to
Yeah,
come home?
that's really it. My time there was done. My second year, well, after the first year, when we started there, one of the things we would do as teachers would be to meet up once a week, I think it was, and we would help plan our classes for the week.
Mhm.
And I remember being in our first one and hearing and feeling the conviction to sign up for another year. And I'm just starting this new one. Like I'm just starting this. And I remember what side of the room, what seat I was sitting in. I can picture that now, sensing the weight to sign up for another year.
Mhm.
And and so after my second year um started, so at some point, even though I knew it was my last year, I think the confirmation for me was receiving Teacher of the Year,
Mhm.
with I think a couple of other uh, partners in education, and so uh, I felt like that was a good time to leave.
Yeah.
It you where you don't ever want to get comfortable as a Western person, even a Westerner who feels like you may not be Christian. Chinese people think you're Christians because you're Western. You never
Interesting.
want to get comfortable in a place like that.
Mm.
And I think I was afraid that I would get too comfortable if I stayed there too long.
So you came home and then what did you start doing?
I came home, started looking for work, and I went back to church like I did, before I left. And I couldn't fit. I couldn't breathe.
Mm.
I felt suffocated. Something that happened to me in China that I wasn't aware of. The crazy thing about that is while in China, I led a 2-year Bible study for
Mm,
7 college students.
mhm.
The 7 I started with are the 7 I ended with. I graduated them from Bible study. We read the book of Luke. We read it for 2 years straight.
Wow.
Uh, Read it until we finished it. And I graduated them. I got them a graduation gift. I took them to take professional pictures. They had never experienced that before. I did all of those things. I got them Bible on MP3. No, the book of Luke on MP3. All of that. Only to realize that I never taught them how to be Christians.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a big
Uh,
part of it, right?
I mean, I was supposed to be doing that, but I learned that there's a distinct difference between teaching my kids or my students the love of God versus Christianity or religion.
Mm,
And so I come back here to Christianity, and I'm like,
yeah.
I can't even breathe here.
Uh-huh.
It just was. I was different. I was changed, and I was really struggling with adjusting back into Christian culture. I was struggling with hearing the devil so much about the devil, and there was tithing and there was communion, and I hadn't done that in 2 years, and I hadn't taught my students that either because my students were poor.
Yeah.
It didn't even come to my mind to teach them tithing.
Yeah.
And it didn't come to my mind to teach them about drinking blood and eating a body.
Right.
And I know that's metaphorical, but how do you teach that in a culture with a different language and different mindset around perhaps cannibalism, you
Right.
know? And
Mhm,
so I had to teach them just the basics.
mhm.
God, I believe there's a God, and I believe that God loves you.
Yeah.
That's that was it. And
Yeah.
so when I come back, I realized I hadn't taught my students this stuff, and neither had I participated. What does that mean, you know?
Yeah.
And it took me on a 2.5 month journey of reading my Bible from beginning to end to try to figure out, where all this fits, if it matters at all.
Yeah.
And
I can
you know,
imagine that it's a part, which I think could probably be expressed for to anything, right? That there's like the book version, the stuff that's good on paper and the things that we're gonna learn, and then there's the living it in reality, the on the
mhm,
streets version, right? And
yeah,
I think when I was listening to you talk, I was thinking back to Spanish, all the Spanish classes that I've taken, right?
mhm,
I was
mhm,
really good at reading it and learning it, and then taking a test on a piece of paper, and then throw me on the streets of Mexico, and I'm like a little bit of a robot trying to remember what I learned in the book, but like no one actually taught me about
the
Mexican
culture,
culture, or
yeah,
like the normalities or the things that are taboo or offensive, or those kinds of things, right? So you learn a piece of it, and then there's this whole other piece of it that's actually real world experience and real world
right,
exchanges with other people.
right, right. And how, if it didn't fit there, I think the question for me
Yeah.
was, if the devil doesn't fit there, why does it fit here? If the
What
devil
a
works here,
question.
if the devil works here, why doesn't it work there?
Yeah.
So I had to figure those things out, and I had come to some resolves on my own. But the fact that there was a question and there was a need for a question was shaking my world. It
Yeah.
was it was really shaking the table for me. And so the best way, well, so going leading to the book, so there was that struggle.
Mhm.
But then Barack Obama had been uh, deemed president. He had been tapped, if you will, and um, and our white evangelical brothers and sisters of influence were being vocal about having a black president.
Mm.
And between that reality and my own personal reality and challenge with going back and being a part of Black Christian church, I was over it.
Yeah.
And I remember watching a news story about a pastor who had invited his grandson to the pulpit to sing a racist song about having a black president. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yes. And it was on CNN. I remember I was in my apartment. I stood up to turn my TV off because I couldn't take it anymore.
Mhm.
I walked over to my front door to pick up some shoes that I had left at the door. And when I stood, I said, Lord, I don't want to die a Christian.
Oh my gosh.
So from that I literally took
That
one
was the
step.
moment? That was
That
the
was the
moment it
moment.
came out? Oh my
Yes. I took one step
whew.
from that, like, what? And then the next step, I said, that's a book. And then the next step I said out loud, I wasn't planning on writing a book.
As a fellow author, that's how it gets you.
I'm
All of a
telling
sudden you're
you,
like, "Whoa, whoa."
where is what? You know?
Yep. Where'd that come
So
from? Oh my
where'd
goodness, here
that
it is.
come from? And I hear so many other ideas for so many other people.
Yeah,
So that's one thing that made me know that it was for me because I hear well for other people and their ideas. I
yeah.
never had it, I never heard my own. And so for
Oh, I
me to
love
hear
this.
that as a book was like, this is a book. And so I started, like I said earlier, to pray about what is this book supposed to be? And I
Mm,
started writing.
yes.
I got a certificate today from Writer's Digest. My book has won 3 awards and it's not even been published a year yet.
My gosh. Well, okay, that's wonderful, by the way. That's absolutely
Yes.
amazing. I did see that on your page today. Thank you for bringing it up. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to hear about what it was like to write the book. Like as you were sitting down to write it, as something that wasn't that kind of an idea that hit you, where you were like, "This is a book now." When you sat down to write it, did you find that it was like easy or challenging? I guess I have two questions. Did you find that it was easy to write the book, and did you have any hesitation as like things were coming out of you were writing the book?
Absolutely, I had hesitations. It was not easy to write because I was going to have to be truthful. So where I started was when I began to, like I said, kind of meditate on how to write this book or what it was supposed to be in it. One thing I believe I heard was that I had already started writing it.
Mm,
So what that meant was I needed to go back to some sort of documentation I had already been keeping.
mhm.
And that for me was a lot of the emails that I was sending back home from China. So what I had, where I start is this very religious person who's going to save and change China. That's where I started. And so I'm as this person who's sitting down to write this book, who has evolved and changed, is looking back at the person who went to China and going, oh, I don't even believe that anymore. What was I thinking?
I know. I love. We're so ambitious. When we don't know what's on the other side, we're like, I'm going in. And then
Yes. Cover me.
cover me. Then looking back on it, we're like, I really thought that. I really
Yes.
said
Yes.
that.
So it starts out kind of some maybe kind of funny and some kind of sad.
Yeah.
For example, one of my students came to me about breaking up with or finding out that her boyfriend was cheating. And these are Asian students, freshman college students. And I'm learning the culture.
Yeah.
And yet my dingy self gonna give her some scripture to go and read. But I think the biggest part of the my response was the religion in it. And the religion in it was that I had forgotten my own heartbreak.
Mm. You took
The re-
yourself as a person outside of the situation to like push scripture, forgetting that being a human being and understanding is the greatest connector of all. I see your face.
and so I was so like I forgot that I had my own story. So
Yeah.
in my book, I reflect back on that email because I call myself testifying about it. Like she read Proverbs 31 and she loved it. And then, but I had my own story of heartbreak. Why didn't I tell her my story as a woman, number one? And number
Mm,
two, as a woman in love. And number three, as a woman from another country experiencing heartbreak, just like she was.
Right.
It didn't matter that I was from another country. It doesn't matter that I lived in another culture. It doesn't matter what I represented to her.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. Or maybe it would have mattered if I had told her I have had heartbreak too.
Yeah.
You from the United States?
Yeah.
You? Yes, we all do. And I didn't, so I asked the question, does religion steal our stories?
Mm.
I traded my story for someone else's story. Proverbs 31 is somebody else's story.
Mhm.
And I traded my story for someone else's. And so I was disgusted with myself about that. So it's telling the truth about those things.
Mhm.
I think another one is when one of my students came to me and asked me to name his nephew. And I start praying about it instead of empowering him to do it,
Mhm.
so that when he sees his nephew, he sees and feels that sense of pride,
Yeah.
not not the pride that I would sense hearing about it later.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm disappointed that I didn't know to empower him. Instead, I prayed about what to name his son so that I could tell the story later.
Right.
So, so
Well, these are
religion.
some really powerful revelations, and
Hmm.
you know, I appreciate hearing them mostly because I think that yeah, I don't really have anything to say about organized religion on this show. But I think that it's really powerful to remind people that we are people no matter what religion that we practice, and that we
Yes.
have the power to um connect with other people through our stories first and foremost.
Yes.
And even if you have religion in your heart and you have religion as part of your regular practice, what does it mean to be a person on the planet with other people? And what does it mean to connect with them on a level where you're seeing them eye to eye versus handing them scripture? You're meeting
Yes.
them with your experience versus, read the book. Um, well, it sounds, this idea of being able to speak from your own experience and
Yes.
discrepancy that you had coming back from China and
Hmm.
coming and realizing that this was a story that you wanted to tell. I'm so grateful that you did. I feel like there's just so much confidence that had to go into writing a book like this and being off like very vulnerable in this truth because I can already hear people who are like, you shouldn't say that or you shouldn't put that into words, right? I would
Yeah.
love to hear about the journey of confidence that it took for you to write this. And I know that you talk a lot about authenticity inside of like your confidence. I would love to hear like what that is specifically for you.
You know, if I guess if I can go backwards, because I don't know if I had confidence in writing the book. I don't know that I can own that. I
I
there
can
was,
throw it at you though, because I see it. I'm
and I say
sending it to you.
I only say that because there was those challenging days where those are my stories, but then I tell stories of experiences that challenge me to look uh, at religious doctrine and ask questions of it.
Yeah.
I was not confident. But the conviction to do it
Yeah.
would not leave me.
Yeah.
This is, I've said this before. If I did not write it, conviction would have killed me.
Oh, yeah. I've been
So
there.
it was the necessity for the book was so heavy on me that if I didn't write it, it would have killed me.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I was confident. I had to surrender to it.
Yeah.
I had to surrender to this assignment, if you will. Um, so if you want to tie confidence to authenticity, as Tabitha Brown would say, that's your business. But what I can say is what I can say is that the journey in writing it and to publishing it
Yeah.
and the conversations I'm having have have revealed me to me.
Mm,
And so authenticity for me is, if you will, daring to be who you believe yourself to be.
mhm.
Um, and so, I feel like these conversations, and again, the publishing of the book and writing it was just peeling away all of uh, the who I thought I was leaves.
Yeah,
If you, I call them fig leaves.
yeah,
All the things that was expected of me to be, everything I thought I was supposed to be. It was just peeling it all away, and it was revealing to me who I am, and I'm daring to be that person.
yeah,
That is authenticity for me.
yeah. You say you didn't have the confidence to write the book, and I just keep going back to it because I truly believe that there are people out there that would have let the idea crush them, that would have said, I keep thinking about this over and over and over. And I speak to these women every day. I have this dream, I have this thought, I have this conviction. I feel like I need to tell the truth and go out there. And they will let it crush them.
Wow.
And you actually did it, you took the time to write it down. And maybe at the time it didn't feel like confidence, but I am gonna keep showering you with it because I have known people who have allowed these things that will not leave them, these truths about themselves or their
Yeah.
experiences, to really just take them all the way down. I mean, and sometimes to the deepest points of, I don't even know how to get back up anymore. And
Wow.
and so I think, and maybe courage is a better word to use, but I
Yeah.
see the confidence in it, and maybe that's just my confidence focused brain. But
Hmm.
in order to bring something like this to life, it does take time and energy and courage and confidence to say, I wrote this and I stand behind it, even
Yes.
though it can be a very controversial topic,
Yes.
and your
Yes.
title really hits, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like I don't want to die a Christian. And I know Christians are very devout in their values
Yes.
and their religion and their practice, but then to
Right.
also put it on there, I don't want to die that way, right? It's
Yeah.
not even I don't
Right.
want to live that way. I don't want to die. I don't want the day to come where I'm leaving this earth and this is where I still find myself. Like that's
Yes.
extremely powerful. And I can't wait to read it. I have to admit, I haven't read it yet, but I am going to read it. And and I think that it's one of those things that I keep coming back to that um really is I feel like the most powerful stories are the stories about our lives and our experiences.
Hmm.
But also, there's so much power in the stories that don't agree with everything and everyone.
Yeah.
To
Right.
be the first person or even a pioneer of a message, even if that message is just your own, to say and it out loud, like, I know that all of you look this way and think this way, and maybe even want me to follow you this way. And I'm sorry, but I think this, and I'm over here, and this is the way that I'm going.
Right.
Um, I would love to hear like how that experience has shaped you, like I guess the reaction, right? Like how
Right.
has
Right.
the people's reaction been for you?
I haven't gotten a lot of negative reaction. There have been, people who are pulled away in relationships. That's fine. I knew that day would come. Um, it's all interesting. I think one of my favorite reactions was, well, what is your doctrine? You
Yeah.
know, and I said, well, I don't have one. I don't have a doctrine. Well, you just make it up. No, life is teaching me.
Mhm.
Life is giving me and rendering to me and surrendering to me standards. You know what I mean? If there's a doctrine, maybe it's that it's love. But then, then she would have wanted to know, well, do you love by the way scripture? I don't have,
Girl, I'm
I
gonna
don't.
put this down.
Right, right. I don't want my experience of life, people, love, and the world to be limited by a religion. I don't want that. I think that um, there is no religion that offers all of what divinity is,
Mhm.
whether you call that God or whomever,
Yeah.
whatever you call divinity, whatever that divine source and resource is, no religion offers all of who that is,
Mhm.
and said, or what that is. And so um, I don't want a doctrine. I want to be free to learn and experience as much of that divine person as I can.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So, yeah.
I There's just so much in this, and I like I said, I was really excited to hear from you because I personally don't have an opinion on the topic. I'm not a practicing Christian, and so for me, I do know that there's just been a lot of what's the right word? Like conversation around Christians and how Christians are showing themselves here in the US, and
Hmm.
you know what it means to practice religion versus the type of person you are and all those kinds of things. And so I just
Hmm.
found it really interesting, and it this conversation has actually brought a lot of things to my eyes that I hadn't seen before. So I'm really grateful for that. Um I want to switch gears here real quick because I know that you organize local events for Black women, and I feel like if we were going to talk about, you know, being a Christian and like ways like bringing women together and having things for them to do and talk about, I feel like um, that is, you know, what I would imagine, you know, the reality of it versus the doctrine of it, right? Like bringing
Hmm.
women together. So tell us a little bit about you know, with Bikes for Breakfast and Melanin Miles. What are those activities and how did you get those started and why?
So I love the NY part because that's where I was going to start. And that being when I decided I didn't want to be a Christian anymore, then what was I going to do?
Twiddling the fingers.
So I went outside. I started hiking. I started cycling and swimming and really just exploring the world. I mean, most every birthday now, I find something new to do.
I love
Um,
it.
and so I started Bikes and Breakfast as a result of being a woman who cycles all the time and being Black and not having anybody to guide me in this way because we're still a minority in the sport. So when I started cycling, I went to Walmart and bought a bike. And I started riding in this very bike active city. And I would be riding and see and hear all these machines on two wheels riding by me. Hearing about a bicycle that sounds like a car. You know, it's like, I want that. And so I went through several bikes, trying to figure out this whole sport, and it made me, kind of be. I became a source for other Black women,
Mm,
um, in my city and in the community, and so I started helping ladies, learn how to clip into their pedals and things like that. And so one day I was teaching one of my friends how to clip into her pedal. And I said, let's just, since you got it, let's practice. Let's go downtown. So we ride downtown and we ride in front of this hotel that is brand new. And I just said, hey, we should ride down here for breakfast one day. I said, hey, bikes and breakfast. And,
yes.
and so then it became, well, who do I want to do this for?
Yeah.
And there's an organization called Black Girls Run. It's a national organization, and we have a local one here in my city. And so I thought I'll offer it to Black Girls Run. And I kind of realized that at that time when I started to do this, that this was my ministry. This was
Mhm.
this was my ministry, which would be to create a safe space outside for Black women, safe and trustworthy.
Yeah.
A lot of us want to be outside, we want to get outside, but we don't know anybody else who's doing it, and we're afraid
Yeah.
to go out ourselves, and we're afraid to do it with anybody that is not a person of color.
Yeah.
We get left, we get dropped, we get left in
Yep.
the woods, we get so
We
I
get hurt.
my goal is to provide integral experiences. And so every other month, we do Bikes and Breakfast, and I choose a different breakfast spot every other month, and I choose a different spot that we meet at.
Love it.
Um, right there, and one of my favorite things is to hear the laughter. Um, I usually don't talk. I lead out and I just listen to all of the conversation, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So there are wives and mothers and professionals and nurses and teachers and all different kinds of professions out there, and we're sisters and taking care of each other, and we're riding and we eat, we tell stories with each other and tell our experiences. We talk about movies and work and trips and children, and then we get on our bike,
Hey.
ride back, and it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites.
It sounds to me like it's a more aligned and resonant way to serve people that you care about than what you were
Yes.
doing before. And I think that's really beautiful, having a community of Black women who support each other and doing things. We had Bianca on, who is the founder of Healthy, Big, and Black, which is, a movement for big women who want to be
Mhm.
active, who want to be healthy, but find it like they don't know where their people are, and they're judged
Yes.
a lot, they're left behind, they're ridiculed, those kinds of things, ridiculed even within their own families, right? And so
Yes.
I think that groups like these are so important to Black women because we are out here and we're trying to find people that are interested in doing the same things that we're doing. So you organizing something like that is so wonderful, and
Yes.
I love to hear that it's something that lights you up. Um,
Yes.
I want to, okay, so we're going to end off here, but I wanted to ask you what it is that you would like to be known for.
For loving people, and for being authentic too. Both of them. I think
Mm.
one is connected to the other. I think when you are authentically yourself, you find it easy to love people. You know, that's a big deal to me because I was I was trained uh, to see people apart from myself so that I could then bring them into the fold.
Mhm.
I was supposed to find sinners and get them saved.
Mm.
And now I don't want anything to do with that. I'm not interested in salvation. As a person who still believes in God and believes in a relationship with God through the message of Jesus Christ, I wouldn't know about or have entertained this idea of God if it weren't for Christianity. So I'm not Christianity didn't hurt me as I write it, but it did hold me back. And
Mhm.
so I just want to love people. And I found that I can't do that and have an agenda. To create and
Mm.
gather relationships to get people to make them Christians to me is an agenda. And that's not love. And so I just want to love people. Highlight the word just.
It's really powerful stuff. And, I commend people like you who are spreading this message of love. Um, one of my messages tends to be more of one of like respect, like mutual respect, not super lovey-dovey. But when I meet people who genuinely have this desire to love people and spread this message of love, I can just feel it coming through to me, and I'm like, thank you, and I can't wait for all of these people who are like ready to meet you or getting ready to meet you. I can tell that you're going to be out here changing lives. You are changing lives right now in a way that is more authentic to who you are and what you want to be on
Yeah.
this planet. Chandrika, thank you so much for sitting with me today. You really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I hope that everybody listening today has heard the message that you had to share. And, one of the things I just want to say is I really appreciate that you're not bashing Christianity, which I think was a little bit of a concern um, for people who were listening to the show. It's more that you were saying, this is my experience and this is what I got it and this is the direction I went. So, in that message of love, not bashing the religion or the people who still are involved, actively involved in the
Right.
religion, but just saying, this is my journey, this is who I am. And that I do believe that you will be an inspiration to others who are feeling the same thing but are afraid to step out into what they're authentically thinking and feeling on their journey, and that it's not about taking people away from the religion or away from the church, but that you can still follow what aligns with you from your religion and still also want to be out of the box a little bit.
Right. I'll tell you, one of the things I write, I don't know if you have time, I would read it. But I just talk about uh, the fact that I was born into the womb of Christianity, just like I was born into the womb of my mother. But at some point, my mother's womb became too small.
Mm, wow.
So as her womb could only expand so far, and then I outgrew her womb, and I've outgrown Christianity. I felt like I couldn't be the love that I was being called to and be a Christian. So I had to leave Christianity in order to be what Christianity talks about.
Yes. Well, I for those of you who are interested in reading the book, there is going to be it's on Amazon. Lord, I don't want to die a Christian. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes as well. So if you're reading the show notes, there'll be a link in there. Where would you like people to connect with you online?
I am on Instagram, Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, all the major platforms. Let me know where you heard about me from. Otherwise, I'll think
Yeah.
you're strange. I'll think you're a little strange.
We're in that day and age where things are getting strange online.
Right, like I
Well,
love you, but say something. Tell me who you are. I'm still protective of myself.
hey,
So,
y'all hear that? You gotta tell Chandrika that you came from Women of Color and Confidence.
yes, yes. Let me know where you heard from me from, where you heard about me, and I will definitely respond.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciated this conversation and everything that you had to share. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. We will be back in another 2 weeks with a fresh episode of Women of Color and Confidence. We'll see you all then. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Wow, that was such a powerful interview with Chandrika Phea. I hope you really enjoyed listening to the bits and pieces of her story that align with her authenticity. And I know she talked a little bit of feeling like she didn't have the confidence to write the book, she didn't have the confidence to tell her story. But there are definitely some bits and pieces about her story that required some amazing self confidence, some amazing courage to come out and share her story with all of you. I hope that you'll take the time to pick up her book and give it a read. There were a lot of great aha moments and tidbits inside of this interview. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode with you. We'll see you then.